Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Band with Kaleidoscope Ears, the podcast that can go on for lifetimes. Hello, James. How are you tonight?
I'm all right. How you doing?
I'm doing good. Yeah, but I can't do that.
I see what you did there.
Oh, yeah, tricky me. So, yeah, you can't do that is what we're doing tonight. And can I make a public service announcement before we begin, if you wouldn't mind? First of all, I just want to make an announcement that, lo and behold, my website is now up and running. So that's a good thing. It took me about 3 hours to put it together with this program called Moody. I have a joke about it, but it would be totally politically incorrect, so I won't go into that. And secondly, mobilize. It's like I always say, it's like somebody with an Asian accent trying to say mobilize. Oh, bad. Cancel me.
My family's Japanese, so I think I'm allowed to make those jokes.
Okay, there you go. You have carte blanche. And secondly, I just want to make an announcement that I have been working feverishly on a new video series all about the parallel relative switch, which comes up all the time in these podcasts. And I finally come to the realization that this piece of theory is very, very important to the academic world. And in a sense, it completes the entire circle of music theory. It completes it because now you could take any chord progression and know what's going on with the chords once you add this little piece. So I'm really excited about this. Maybe I shouldn't be announcing it so early because it's probably going to be a couple of months before it comes out, but I'm excited about it. I've been working feverishly on it, so there's that. And James, you're working on a project right now, right?
Yes. Yes. Anyway, it's coming.
Okay, what's it about again?
Media. People will see it when they see it. I don't
okay.
know.
Okay, all right, cool. All right, well, let's talk about You Can't Do That. I guess we'll start the way we usually do, James, if you have a little kind of the background history or just the general vibe.
So the background of this is, obviously, this was written for the Hard Day's Night movie. Ultimately, it was supposed to be in the movie, and it was one of those ones that I think was written on a bit of a deadline, like, we got to get something out. So we wrote this, and it was slated for a time to be the Beatles' next single, until Paul wrote Can't Buy Me Love. And so that ended up becoming the A-side. This became a B-side. They did record it for the famous theater scene at the end of Hard Day's Night movie, but they did not use that in the movie, so it got relegated to the second side of the album. Trivia note, who was in the audience as they were filming that theater scene for Hard Day's Night? Phil Collins, a young Phil Collins.
Young Phil Collins. That's cute.
Who said, I can't remember if it was in it wasn't the anthology. Well, maybe the making of Hard Day's Night. There was some documentary where they interviewed him about this. And he said he remembered them filming You Can't Do That. But then went to see the movie and it wasn't in there. And he was like, what?
Oh, okay. Anyway. Yeah.
Okay. So for today, background, I really did do some research today, so not like last time where I was seeing my pants. And so in the interest of delving up a different source today, I am unfamiliar with this site, so I'm not vouching for it. I really haven't looked around at it, but it's a new site, to me anyway. BeatlesBooks.com. You Can't Do That. It has some good info on this song. So it says, the influence of the Beatles on modern music is still felt today. Whether current hitmakers admit it or not, or realize it or not, the patterns and structures used in popular music most times can be traced back to the pathway paved in the 60s by the Fab Four. One of many musical details the Beatles spearheaded was the use of what we call the two-measure guitar riff. This riff, which encapsulates guitar rock throughout the generations, was first popularized by the Beatles in the song You Can't Do That. The Beatles used this feature continually throughout their career, evidenced in I Feel Fine, Ticket to Ride, Day Tripper, If I Needed Someone, Paperback Writer, and I Want to Tell You, among others. The riff usually appears at the beginning of the song, played only by the guitar, after which the rest of the band kicks in to play the remainder. The riff then becomes the most prominent identifiable feature of the song, as it is repeated throughout or in strategic places of the song. Other 60s artists were quick to pick up on this trend, such as the Rolling Stones, Satisfaction and The Last Time, the Yardbirds, Heart Full of Soul, Paul Revere and the Raiders, Kicks, and the Monkees, Pleasant Valley Sunday. Evidence of this trend even made it into the 90s, with hits such as Blister in the Sun, There She Goes, and even Smells Like Teen Spirit. The Beatles may not have been the first to utilize this gimmick, witness the piano riff on Money, That's What I Want, but they were the first to make it fashionable and trend-setting, as everyone, it seemed, was bent on imitating the formula the Beatles were using. The trendsetter formula of the two-measure guitar riff was heard first on the John Lennon rocker, You Can't Do That. Anyway, getting into the song itself, Paul and I enjoyed writing the music for this film, said John. But there were times when we honestly thought we'd never get to write all the material, and You Can't Do That was one of those songs. Apparently written in Miami Beach, which would place it writing-wise February 13th-ish of 1964. And it was performed, as I say, for the cameras for that scene from Hard Day's Night on March 31st, 1964. And interestingly, Lennon went on later in 1980 to say, that's me doing Wilson Pickett. You know, a cowbell going four in the bar and the chord going cha-toon. Hearing this from the horse's mouth, you would think that would settle the issue. Unfortunately, this is not the case. The problem is that Wilson Pickett had not come into his own as of January of 1964 when this song was written. By that time, Wilson had only released 4 early singles, which were 6/8 ballads, quite unlike anything he's known for, such as In the Midnight Hour and Mustang Sally, which were much closer to what Lennon was talking about. These early ballads definitely didn't have a cowbell or anything resembling a cha-toon. John obviously was thinking retrospectively and originally found inspiration elsewhere, such as the R&B classics coming out of Memphis at the time. Confirmation of where the inspiration actually came from may never be known. It goes on to talk about the lyrics, talking about George's Rickenbacker 360 12-string guitar, other aspects of this, and the production. But people can read through that on their own time. We'll put the link in the show notes for people who are interested.
All right, well, that's actually, even though you say you can't vouch for it, that seems pretty spot on. And fascinating fact about Wilson Pickett. Like, okay, so where'd it come from then? Yeah, very cool. All right, so thank you, James, for that. And let's talk about this song. I guess the very first noticeable thing for me about the chord structure is that it is a verifiable 12-bar blues. And if we do a 12-bar blues in the key of G, that would be G7 for 4 bars. There's another variant on it, but G7 for 4 bars. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3. Then C7 for 2, G7 for 2, D7 for 2, C7, for 1, this is all 1 bar. I'm sorry, so that last 4 bars is actually 1 measure per chord. This is something, it's so universal that we were taught this in college. Music school, and back in the day, it's funny because I have these young guitar students now who they'll meet another guitar player and they're scratching their heads over what should we play, because music is so all over the map these days, for one, and secondly, when I was growing up, everybody was a guitar player or some form of musician. So, but the thing was, like, if you ran into a stranger who had a guitar and you wanted to jam together, the very first default thing you'd say is, you want to play blues? And that was where it took off, usually. All right, so there's a 12-bar blues in G, okay? And as you can see, it lists the Roman numerals underneath, 1 dominant 7, 4 dominant 7, back to 1 dominant 7, then 5, 4, 1, 5, all dominant 7. Now, one comment I'll make about this is that in a normal key, this is why I have an argument with this idea of keys sometimes, because the 1, the 4, and the 5 in the key of G, all right, the 1 would have to be, if you extend the chord to a 7, it would be major 7, and the 4 would be major 7. The 5 is the only one that's truly dominant. So the blues is radical in that regard. They broke all the rules, and because they broke all the rules, a new kind of music theory is soon to be arriving based on this. Now what I want to do is, since it's a 12-bar blues, before I get into talking about this a little bit more, the flip side, you can't do that. Would you say there's any similarity between these songs at all?
The flip side?
You can't do the flip side.
Can't Buy Me
Can't
Love.
Buy Me Love. Right.
Well, they're both definitely blues, and Can't Buy Me Love is some sort of variant of 12-bar, but I don't know if it follows the pattern.
We're going to look at that. And in fact, I wasn't expecting you to say that, but cool that you caught it, because usually when I think of Can't Buy Me Love, the first thing that goes through my head is Can't Buy Me Love. So it sounds far away from the blues when you hear that, right? So, okay, and next screen share. Okay, so here we have a standard 12-bar blues. Now, if you compare it to You Can't Do That, there's not a single deviation between the two songs, the two pieces of music, all right? So obviously, the 12-bar blues was a universal of rock and roll way back then. Chuck Berry was doing it. Everybody was doing it. It was rock and roll. The blues sped up. Now, the interesting thing to look at for me here is Can't Buy Me Love. If you look at the first row and compare the first row, exactly the same. Second row, exactly the same. Third row, slight difference. We have a cut on the C7. Actually on the D7, but I've told you before, that has a little accent and a cut on it. But when we go over here, the only difference between the two sets of chords is this C7 over here. Here it's a G7. That's it. I don't know who wrote what first. If Paul wrote You Can't Buy Me Love after You Can't Do That, or before it, but all I know is there goes the Lennon-McCartney competition. Oh, he's writing a 12-bar blues rock and roll. I'm going to write one. But, Can't Buy Me Love is implicated in another little situation with John. Because he's saying, money is what I want, right? And then Paul comes back with, Can't Buy Me Love. So, I'm not a materialist.
Yeah, it's an interesting conversation they have back and forth. So I guess my observation about what you're saying right now is that we often think of the blues as a feeling, but actually you can think of it as a progression, and that can take a lot of different forms, including an upbeat, energetic song like Can't Buy Me Love.
Yeah. The blues is remarkable. It really is about feeling, and most guys that play the blues enjoy it so much because it's not thinky, it's not jazz. You can play one pentatonic scale to your heart's delight and just be happy with it. And one thing I always say about blues is at one and the same time the simplest form of music, and at the same time it's also one of the most sophisticated forms of music. One of the reasons I say that is because, I've described this before, so maybe I shouldn't go long into it, but the blues turnaround is chromatic, except for that half step, right? And if you harmonize it, so now you get this string. And if you harmonize it again, now you get this string. Which means that on any seventh chord, you could use a wild string of chromatics. This is why the blues can become really sophisticated, in a sense, even more than jazz. Because with jazz, there's kind of hard and fast ideas about what goes on with a 2/5 and what you're supposed to do with it. In the blues, it's more based on like the traditions and, they do this, so I'll do it too. The flatted third being bent a little bit. So we have a microtone in there. So blues can be like very evasive. For years, as you know, James, for years and years, I've tried to put together a theory of the blues. And the parallel relative switch, I'm realizing I shouldn't brag that it's a full theory of the blues. It's a partial theory of the blues. It covers a big swath of what came after in rock and roll. But there are other elements to the blues. Like in my work, I haven't really done a lot of discussion about the seventh chord being a one chord. Oh, forgot to remind you when we were talking before. Right now you remember.
Yeah, the tonic, the 7 chord is a secondary dominant for the 4 chord.
Yeah, let me tell you what happened to me in that moment. I'm listening to the Michelle podcast, and I said, this is 5/7 of 4. And just before you broke in, I'm in the kitchen listening to the podcast, and I'm going, wait a second, 5/7 of 4 is also one of the blues. That's intense. That means that 7th chord could be used in 2 different ways. And then you go, I'm having a brain explosion here. I'm realizing that, right? You realize the same, and this is like an old podcast, and I'm just now realizing, wow, what James said is totally spot on here.
You should rewatch all our old podcasts. I get smarter every time, I swear.
You know what? You inspired me because I talk about the 3 systems, and this one dominant 7 has functions in all 3 systems. In the Greek modes, the dominant 7th chord creates the Mixolydian scale, the Mixolydian mode. But that is more Greek modes-ish. In other words, it's not sounding bluesy. Then in the major minor key system, of course, that serves as 5/7 of 4. So I could be in G, hit a G7, and it'll resolve to C. And finally, in the blues, we go back to the Greek modes in the sense that we're establishing it as a 1, yes. But now in the blues system, you blend keys together. So we're blending the minor pentatonic against this 7th chord. So you're...
And that's clearly the way that the tonic 7th is functioning in this song, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So that was a point I was actually going to bring up later, but fine, this is great. I'm glad we talked about it. Blues is going to be a big part of our discussion tonight. I just want to mention, too, that unfortunately, because I crammed this about an hour and a half before we started, I have the excuse that I'm working on my video series, so I was kind of feverish with that. But I haven't done the research, but I've certainly heard the songs, all sorts of songs, that it's an interesting phenomenon where it'll be set up like a blues progression will be set up. Sometimes not with 7ths, just majors, but that's fine. But what happens is in the last 4 bars, they depart from that whole turnaround section, and they'll take you somewhere else. And I can't think of a single song that does that right now. Well, one is Kind of Peg by Steely Dan. It is actually following the first 8 bars of a 12-bar blues. It's abstracted, but it's there, right? So if it's in G, I don't know that they use really hard inversions, but I'm just using straight majors. Got your picture. So it's going 4/1, but the emphasis is on 1, right? So you're up in blueprint. So there's the blues, and then we're coming back to G. Actually, it does go to the 5, and when you smile for the camera, and then it goes off on its trip. Smile for the camera, I know I love you better. Yeah, it almost completes a full blues cycle. Now, obviously, that doesn't sound like the blues, right? Because there's a tradition in the blues. Like the last blues I remember to hit the pop airwaves was Tracy Chapman's "Give Me a Reason." That was the last one I heard. And then after that, the blues kind of went away from pop music. I'm going to suggest something to people watching this. I just watched the very recent, I'm going to suggest it to you, James. It's great. Rick Beato's recent, he's calling it his first podcast. Now he's doing a formal podcast thing. I can't tell the difference, to be honest, but it's just Rick with a microphone. I've seen that before. He's interviewing a writer, Ted Gioia is the guy's name, and the guy is a music lover. I'm not sure how much of a musician he is, but this discussion, about an hour, it's a long podcast, about 2 hours. Maybe that's why he's calling it a podcast, because it's a full length, long form. But about an hour in, this guy sounded like me. He sounded like talking about the blues, how important it is to get it back into music. And blues and gospel, specifically, strangely enough, coincidentally enough, and all the other stuff, a friend of mine sends me a video and says, you got to check this out. This is great. It was a band called Lawrence, and it's a family. It's kind of like the Partridge Family or whatever, a brother and sister team, and they're doing a piece of gospel. I forget the title, something like Don't Let It Go or Don't Give Up, something. But I'll send it to you, James. It's awesome. And I'll also link it in the show notes. I'll dig it up and link it. But this thing is it's white people mostly, right? There's some black folks, but it's mostly white people singing real gospel. And I swear, man, it warmed my heart to such a point that a tear almost came to my eye. It was so powerful. And another synchronicity with this, the blues, is that my buddy, the great, great genius keyboard player, Rob Mullins, calls me up today, and he goes, Vinny, I watched that podcast that Rick Beato, and he goes, man, that guy after an hour in sounded just like me. And I said the same thing about myself. I can't express to you, everybody, how important blues is. This is why I'm coming out with my theory about it. It has to be understood. It has to come back into music because it's the very soul of American music. It truly, truly is. That's why George Gershwin was trying to write blues operas, really important stuff. So, all right, I'm really pounding the point here, but you get the point. Yeah, so let's talk about all right, so this, you know what that is, James, don't you?
Yeah, but I'm going to let you tell me.
Okay, be coy. All right, so this is on a G chord. That's the G7 chord. We have the flatted third, which is the blue note. If I were to play that note in a high octave,
It's the sharp 9?
It's the sharp 9 note. This is why I always say, like in my Blues Clues playlist, I talk about how the sharp 9 chord, if you can compress all of blues harmony into one chord, it would be the sharp 9 chord.
I never realized the sharp 9 was the flat 3. That's how dumb I am.
Okay, all right. Now you know. Now you know. Yeah. Yeah, so if you play this chord, right, what you're doing is you're making the blues happen in one chord because it's major, it's minor, and it's dominant. All three chord types mixed into one chord. Of course, well, the seventh and the major are the same thing, but you know what I mean. The seventh is a major chord with an added note to it. But still, that chord encompasses everything about the blues, about blues harmony. And my contention in my video series is that the blues system is about blending keys together, right? So to create a sharp 9 chord, you need two different scales to do it, all right? We must have talked about this before, because you're nodding like you've heard it before.
It just makes sense to me. I don't know if we've talked about it.
Yeah. This whole idea of key blending is, to me, it's remarkable. It truly is a discovery. And we're not talking about Charles Ives here, just like, I'll have this part of the orchestra play in C sharp and this one play in D, and boy, is that going to make a noise. This is logical and practical, and it makes sense. It's based on principles. So that. So yeah, right there. Is an immediate statement that this is bluesy. Now, I found a curiosity. It's so funny. Every time, we were joking about trying to shorten this to 30 minutes, but every time I look at a Beatles song, I find some weird anomaly that I never heard before. There are a few of them in this song. Now, one of them is the D7 turnaround. Now, I'll tell you something. I have a good ear for relative pitch. I can hear, if this E7 chord is being played here, I can hear that E7 chord is being played there and not there or anywhere else, right? Now, here's the weird thing. The turnaround, because right, that whole trip, I heard a low D in the E string. And not only that, but I heard an E7 shaped chord. Nobody in the world has picked up on this. I heard an E7 shaped chord. I could swear on it. So that means they didn't do it live, but that means in the studio, someone got the idea that low D would be really nice. And it's like, let's tune the whole guitar down a whole step, in which case you'd be using you'd be doing a blues in A instead of G, right? You're just shifting it up to compensate. But it's at 28 seconds into the song. Listen closely for it. So it's either a drop D, and they just use that one note, but I could swear I heard the whole entire E7 shape. So there's one anomaly. Now, I guess we could do the old kind of go along with the chart thing and play the music for it.
If you want to.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, let's do it, because I want people to see where the chords are going in this. Okay, so I didn't put really much of a roadmap to this. In other words, telling you where the jumps are. There are a couple of places I showed you, first ending and second ending here. But I didn't write in the coda or that the fact that after you do the B section, you have to jump back to A and do it twice again. So the form really is A, A, B, A, A, B, A, and out. Okay. Now there's a few things I want to talk about after I drop the screen share. These are just simply accents on those chords. I just decided to be kind of particular about it and put them in there. What's interesting at the end here is you see that RIT, it stands for ritardando, which means to slow down. And that is a very hard thing to do with a full band. And I would imagine even Paul Moody had a harder time because he had to do it separately, you know, with all the different, I guess, well, nowadays on Pro Tools, you could see where the waveforms are. So I guess he was able to do that. But yeah, so that's that for the song. And as you see, it's a standard blues. Now, one of the reasons why I even started doing these podcasts years ago with Steve Anders, the whole reason was to show how there's a distinct difference between European harmony and American harmony. And when I say, I had an argument with somebody about this online, a DJ who's also a jazz pianist. I think he would have seen what I was talking about. I forget what I said, but he said, well, I wouldn't consider blah, blah, blah European harmony. And he showed me an example of something on YouTube, and I listened to it, and I'm like, no, that's totally European harmony. European harmony means we analyze chords according to the rules of harmony that were laid down hundreds of years ago. We're just advancing the same system. Blues is a whole new system. I can't stress this enough. So the very reason I was doing these podcasts was simply to show in how many Beatles songs, here is the American blues harmony, and here is the European standard harmony. This is standard right here. This is no blues whatsoever. And in fact, Can't Buy Me Love does the same thing. Everybody's green. B7 to E minor. Can you take a guess at what's going on there?
Well, B7 clearly isn't in our G key.
Right.
Right. So it's just a 5/7 of 6.
Right, 5/7 to 6, exactly. Totally right. I want to say here that if you were to sit down and figure out, okay, what is this B7 doing here, right? There are only three possibilities. One is it's 5/7 of something. Another is some sort of tritone substitution, right? But obviously the way it's moving, it's not.
So in this case, it's a secondary dominant.
In this case, it's a secondary dominant. But there are three ways to look at an outside major chord, okay? Because this could easily be major. Everybody's green. It's fine, right? The seventh just adds a little bit of spice to it. I'm realizing through all the work I'm doing right now that any outside chord from the key that is major could either be a secondary dominant, a tritone substitution chord, or a parallel relative switch chord. Those are the three choices, all right? See what I mean when I say this is completing the circle of music theory? It truly is. This is so huge. All right, so now here's the thing. Body's green. Now it goes, because I'm the one who won your love, right? Now, this is John, like, being creative, and sometimes I think he looked at Paul and thought, wow, he comes up with these cool chords. I got to do something different, right? So I think John had in mind, everybody's green, because I'm the one who won your love. C and D. Now, you and I have spoken about how each major chord has its own little sister relative minor, right? So the relative, if it was everybody's green because C, D, G, that could have easily been done, and it was so in the style of that era. But instead of C, he's choosing the relative minor of C, and instead of D, he's choosing the relative minor of D. Because I'm the one who won your And that's one of the rare instances where I hear the 3 chord going back to the 1 and I actually like it. I usually don't like that. I really don't. There's something, I don't know why, 3 doesn't, it's not strong when it comes out back. But I think part of it is because you're kind of hearing, I'm the one who won your love, you know? It's almost like you're hearing that. Now, one thing I've brought up a lot in these podcasts is instead of a 2/5, the Beatles, especially John, wrote 3/5s, right? So we have in the key of G 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So the next section is, but if they've seen you talking that way, they'd laugh in my face. So, and that's really nice. It goes by so quickly, you know. But again, that could have been replaced with C and D. But if they've seen you talking that way, they'd laugh in my face. So it could have totally been that. So, and this is why I realized today that when I audiate music, with the Beatles, this always comes up. In my mind, I'll hear the C to D, so I'll assume it's C to D, right? But then I look into what the Beatles did, and it's, whoa, they're doing that? That's what I love about the Beatles. They always surprise me. I think I'm hearing the chords right, and then they show me something really cool and subtly different. So, yeah, there's that. Now, another point I want to make, we're almost to a close. I don't know we're 43 minutes in. Okay. I thought we'd do a half hour. Because I told you before, okay. Now they're playing a D7 chord. Because I told you before.
Flat 3.
Flat 3, or what chord?
We
were just talking about it.
G.
It's on the 5.
Oh yeah, it's on the 5, but it's the wrong flat 3, right? It's an F. F?
It's an F natural, which is it's the sharp 9 chord. It's the
D7
sharp 9.
Okay.
Right. So it does have a flat 3. In D, the 3 is F sharp. So the D, we have the F sharp in the low part of the chord. And
right.
The F,
Okay.
But here's the cool thing: is that is not played. It's a combination of the melody and the chords together that make the sharp 9 chord happen. And I was trying to think of the earliest instance where a sharp 9 chord is played by the Beatles. This is the earliest instant of a sharp 9 chord being played by the Beatles in a blues, where it's acting like a blues chord, okay? And if I were to transpose Till There Was You to the key of G, earlier on, George did a sharp 9 chord.
Yeah, but that's definitely not blues.
That's not blues. That's European harmony, and it's a tritone substitution. You can see it resolved down a half step.
Yeah.
And what it's really doing, it's kind of like, it's almost identical to the normal 5 chord, not a tritone substitution, where you flat the 9 and add the 13. They're very, very close.
Yeah, right.
So, yeah, in fact, when I saw George do that, I never realized the sharp 9 could be used that way. That was news to me. That's cool, I thought. I could do that. Okay. So there is that. And now the Beatles break one of my cardinal rules. Do you remember what my least favorite interval is between 2 notes?
Minor second? I don't know.
God, James. Okay. A minor 9, which is akin.
Right.
All right. It's akin to a minor second.
Yeah.
All right. It's just an octave apart.
Yeah.
So let me show you where the argument is on a C7 chord, right? In the lower part of the chord, we get this, and in the melody, we got. That's bad, right? Because I told you before, oh, you can't do that. But it works. It somehow works. But again, they're playing because I told you before, oh, you can't do that. Now, if you were to translate that into actual chords without, in other words, incorporating the voice into the chord, we get this and this, which is actually really cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Now, on the C, I didn't put the minor ninth in that time. What I did was I did a suspension. So there is no E in it.
Yeah.
Right? But that chord movement, that is kind of nice. I really do like that.
Yeah. No, it works very well.
Yeah, it works.
Yeah.
It works. And now I'm starting to wonder my difficulty with the minor nine interval. Maybe I'm starting to think it's allowed in the blues. And part of the reason why is, blues players, just like if a blues player, like a real standard blues player, would play G minor pentatonic, right, against the blues. Right, that would be like blues playing against it. Now, when I play the minor pentatonic, G minor pentatonic against C7, that note is in the G minor pentatonic. And since I'm so enamored of the blues at this point in my life, I'm thinking I'll allow that for the blues.
Your cardinal rules aren't so cardinal.
They're not so cardinal, and I find that out all the time. And let's not forget, the context of blues harmony is different than the context of European harmony. So that must be understood too, that it's a whole different harmonic vibe to it.
So you got a flat 9 and a sharp 9. How about a 9?
Well, it's not technically a flat 9. It's on the C. It's an 11, the F note.
Oh, right.
Okay. Yeah, it's a minor 9 interval.
Minor
but
9
it's
interval,
not a
right?
Minor 9 chord or anything like that.
Yeah.
So that's about it. I just want to Oh, good. Yeah. Okay. I just want to say one more thing, is that this song is really early, and again, remember I said earlier that you can use G7 as a Mixolydian chord, or you could use G7 as a blues chord, right? As a 1, right? And I demonstrated that in Mixolydian, you'd get the very plain vanilla scale. Which isn't, it's not bluesy at all. Again, in the blues context, now we have something. Now it's spicy, right? Now if you take notes of the Mixolydian scale, all right, I'm leaving out a few notes of the Mixolydian. Sounds familiar, right?
Yeah. Strawberry Fields.
Yes, so I'm leaving out this is something I call an artificial pentatonic. It's an idea I came up with, and this scale came out of it, and I realized it's the same scale. But I took out the 2 of the scale, so I don't get this. So I just jump to 3. I leave the 4 and the 5 and skip the 6. Right? I skip that, so then I get... That's that artificial pentatonic. Now, in this context, he's not actually singing blues then, because the blue note isn't there. I got something. He's not saying I got something to say, right? So there's not that blue note. This means we're going to the Mixolydian side of the spectrum, and to me, this is a foreshadowing, because the Beatles loved 7th chords so much. There are songs that are ballads where they'll be totally European. I can't think of a Beatles song that does this. I've heard it before, but you'll get this really ballady, and then they'll play the 7th chord as the 1, even though it's not blues. It's something the Beatles have done before, and it's because of naivety. They were young. It's like, oh, these 7 chords are so cool. Let's stick it over here. But the point being that
Sorry, I'm just
yeah,
thinking.
so my point
When you
being
are
that
young,
this is
you
kind
do
of-
tend to stick it over there. Right.
yeah, a lot. Very often. So yeah, this is the seed of the psychedelic melodies that came later, as I see it. You know, um, I know there's an example floating around in my head in later Beatles that kind of, but it's not coming to me right now. But certainly, I knew without you. Although that's using the six and stuff,
Well, anyway,
but
it'll come
certainly
to you.
Strawberry Fields. And I guess really we can wrap it up. I think I covered all the points that I could come up with for this.
I don't
But
think I even have any particular questions about what you went through. It seems like it all makes sense.
listen closely at the 28-second mark when they do the. It only happens in the first verse, but listen really closely and see if you can detect something. I can't. It won't work on guitar because our ears are attuned to. Let's change the key for a second. That's what I heard. I heard E7. It's right. It's not on the. It's after the turnaround. Right here. Listen for a really
Low D.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
I will listen. Okay.
Yeah.
Good ear as
Kind of
always,
blew my
Vinny.
mind. It's kind of like. Yeah. I don't know. It's really wild. It's just really wild. I don't think I've ever heard anyone, even the most fanatical Beatles fanatic, mention that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder
Interesting.
if Paul Moody had a hard time with that. If he was listening closely, and he's like,
Right.
well,
We'll have to see. I don't know if Mike Pachelli's ever done the breakdown. If he has and he didn't catch that, I don't know.
You know what? I think he did. I think I saw it as I was researching. Cool idea. Yeah, he might have. He would have caught it if anybody.
If anyone would catch it, you'd think it would be him. All right.
Yeah,
also, yes,
absolutely.
thank you for mentioning. I don't think we mentioned it when we introduced it. That cover was Paul Moody, by the way, everyone. Please subscribe to his channel, support him. We're not trying to steal his work. He does very faithful covers.
Exactly. Yeah. No, he really, really does. He's wholesome as a glass of milk. That kid, but you don't like him.
Yeah. All right. Well, we are both very busy, and I really have to be moving along. So I think we will forego the usual. What's the next single? 10-minute wrap up we usually do.
Yeah, and like the lead singer of the Turtles in London got a preview of Sgt. Pepper's, I'm going to send you tonight the preview of the first video of my series. So
I'm lucky, guys. I get to experience it first. World history, musicology history being set right here.
We'll see.
All right.
We'll see. Take care, James, and take care, everybody. Thanks for joining us tonight.